All right, long ball number one here on Friday morning. Midweek, a trio of North American champions were crowned, for arguably the biggest of the three. The U.S. Open Cup final. Los Angeles Football Club beat Sporting KC. Um, it was an exciting game, huge crowd, lots of passion on display, and legendary journeyman Kai Kamara with maybe the highlight of the night after the game as well.
Yeah, he did. He said some things. I do want to mention. I think Mateusz Bogusz was probably offside, and Sporting fans can be a little upset about that. But yes, and Olivier Giroud gets his first goal. But you're talking about Kai Kamara, and on Wednesday's show, we did talk about whether or not Major League Soccer had killed the Open Cup with their weird decisions about the tournament this year, and Kai talked eloquently about that. We got a clip of him. Let's hear from Kai Kamara.
And if I could just follow up with that, considering your experience in MLS, you're now two-time Open Cup winner as well. How important is it for MLS to be a part of this tournament? Does that mean anything for you moving forward? I mean, can you see any reason why MLS shouldn't be a part of it?
Don was here. I saw him. He was on the podium. He gave me a medal. So let's get him in here and make sure that he don't take MLS away from this. Is that what he's doing? Oh, why are you asking me that then? No, Don better not take this away. Like this is amazing. This is American soccer right here. Listen, last I'll say, we go through the systems of everything that's happened. They told us to go to school, play soccer in school, and go to college and play soccer in college and get drafted and go through the system. And that's what we've done. That's why I give so much credit to Chris Wondolowski, because we've done the same things. And that's the American dream that we wanted to do. And we made it here. So you can't take away from our history, and that's just my opinion. Don't take away from our history. That's our history. A lot of teams in the second division or whatever, third or amateur are looking forward to the U.S. Open Cup, or we can rename it. That's fine. But I don't even think Lamar Hunt's going to be happy about that, wherever he's at. So yeah, please don't take it away.
All right. So there's Guy.
Yeah, I love the fact that such a prominent player and players in general are sharing that sentiment, because I know we talked about it previously that lots of people's favorite memories of American soccer, and it's a galvanizing thing to play in this tournament. I'm really glad that he used that platform to air those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, the man's 40 years old, so let's give him credit for that too. As somebody who's a week away from a birthday, and I'm a little bit older than Kai, just a little bit older than Kai, but at least he reps for the guys in their 40s. Let's just say that. The thing there that's also interesting to me, beyond sort of the MLS should be in the Open Cup part of it, and name checking Don Garber. He didn't say, "Hey Don, you did something bad. You're an evil man." But name checking Don Garber is definitely a move, and maybe if you haven't been around as long as Kai Kamara, you don't do that. I think that's interesting. But he's also identifying the pathway that he took, and he talked about Chris Wondolowski. And that's not the first time in that post-game press conference that he mentioned the path that he followed, that he was, born in Sierra Leone, moved to the United States, high school soccer, college soccer, gets drafted. That is not the standard path anymore that players follow, American players follow. And it's a league that has changed complexion so much since Kai Kamara came into it. I'm not going to sit here and cry over what MLS used to be, because I do think progress is inevitable, and I do think we are witnessing progress for Major League Soccer, Robert. It's the stadiums, it's the bigger salaries, it's the higher profile things happening, more professionalism across the board, all of that. But there's an argument, and I think some people in my age bracket would agree with this. There's an argument that MLS was more special in some ways when it was more accessible, when we had a lot of players like Kai Kamara who did not have a big club coming after them when they were 16, 17 years old, weren't getting a chance to go abroad. Their path was, I want to play soccer for a living. MLS is the only option I have. And because they weren't multimillionaires many times over, the way a lot of guys are now, they were more our people. It felt like people we could see down at the grocery store were playing soccer for us in America. That was kind of cool.
The middle-aged man MLS player is fading out in the sense of the Bill Withers, the guy that could be the dad down the street, not as apparent in the league. Because I never said that, but I had friends that called him the old dad midfielders. Just the workman-like guy. You never notice the thing he does, but he is there in and game out, just chugging along.
Yeah,
And
but that makes Kai more impressive. He's scoring goals. You're talking about guys like Jeff Lorenowitz and Dax McCarty and those kind of guys. And those, yeah, I love those guys. But Kai can still get up there. He can still leap at 40.
yeah, when I went to the Leagues Cup final, I wasn't quite sure if the Columbus fans were more nervous about Olivier Giroud scoring a late goal or if it was Kai Kamara when he changed into the game. And both played a part. And we shouldn't go into it too far, but one thing to consider is Kai Kamara and MLS. What do you call it? A Mount Rushmore. Is Kai Kamara becoming a Mount Rushmore?
No, I
In
mean,
a sense.
longevity is certainly admirable, and he's now a guy. He's not going to get to Chris Sondolowski's record. I just don't think that's going to happen. But just to be in that conversation, have the possibility, speaks a lot to what Kai Kamara has meant to the clubs he's played for. And he's played for a lot of clubs, so there's something there too that maybe we don't want to unpack. As gregarious and as great those comments were, Kai Kamara has been known to be a little bit of a locker room malcontent on occasion. That's not me saying that those things have
11.
happened.
I think 11 teams would say that.
He did make a joke that I appreciated before we move on from the Open Cup and Kai. Somebody said, what did it feel like to score against your former team? And he said, I think every goal I score is against a former team, which is pretty good from Kai Kamara. Yeah.
Yeah, the second championship on the docket from midweek, Campeones Cup. I got a little stick for us not highlighting it on Wednesday. Columbus took on Club America. Very exciting game. Lots of intensity here, but it went to penalties with the Mexican Giants coming out victorious.
Yeah. The controversy here, I mean, look, a good game. Columbus displaying the problems with the approach that they bring to the table. I appreciate Wilfred Nancy. They've won things. I'm not going to criticize the man's approach, but you see the shape that they were in defensively when America got on the break and scored the goal. Obviously, Columbus gets theirs from the set piece later on to get back into it. But the controversy here is, of course, on Malti Amundson's penalty kick and the fact that Malagon came off the line for Club America. And, of course, this is the era of, keepers can't come off the line. And we have video and we're watching and everything. If you come off the line, we're retaking the kick. But apparently in this competition, the laws actually say, well, you don't retake the kick unless the goalkeeper coming off the line impacted the taker. But then that gets into a very subjective question.
That's a very, very dangerous subjectivity area because it's like, did the guy leaping off the line kind of like make you a little nervous, tense up, and hit it off the crossbar like Edmondson did?
Absolutely. I mean, these guys are tuned in, and sometimes you're trying to read the keeper in order to take a penalty kick. I just don't think you can get into this idea of like, we talked about trying to determine intent on fouls. If you go in recklessly, even if you didn't mean to hurt your opponent and you hurt your opponent, you should still be sent off. That you don't get a pass because, I didn't mean it. And that's the case here as well. Like, we don't know if Amundsen was thrown off, and he might say, no, I wasn't, but that could be subliminal. It could be subjective in a way that he doesn't even understand. So I understand the Crew fans upset, but let's just be honest. This is not the most important game they're going to play this year. It might not be the only final that they play in. They've already played in 2 finals this season. It might not be the last one. I think that they're going to be in the mix for an MLS Cup. This is going to be, and this is going to be a black eye on this team, despite the way that it ended.
One of the biggest changes probably in soccer over the last 20 years is the goalie on the line during penalties. If you look some of the big ones, like Brianna Scurry in 99, like 5 yards off her line. Pepe Reina in the 06 final when they came back into Milan, when he made the save, He was like 3 steps off his line.
Man. The old days were wild. They're like halfway to the taker before the penalty kick was taken. But yeah, that's not where we are now. There was a third one of these? A third championship game on Wednesday? What are you talking about?
The Canadian Championship, Vancouver Whitecaps beat Toronto. It was a 0-0 match with Vancouver coming out on top in Canada. America's hat is
Good for
now
Canada.
championed by
I mean,
Vancouver.
Good for Vancouver, I guess. If they didn't score any goals and they went to penalties, it's not the winner of this game. It is a Champions Cup slot and all that, right? We know that that's part of this. So I guess good on Vancouver for earning that. I don't think anybody Vancouver the best of the Canadian teams right now. Is that even? Yeah, I think that's probably true, but it's not like any of them are doing all that great in Major League Soccer right now. I think Vancouver is probably the best because they're in the best spot in the. Actually, let me look at the standings and make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn here. Toronto's in 8th, so they're in a playoff spot in the East, but only barely.
Just.
And then Vancouver's in 7th. They have 10 more points than Toronto, but they're in 7th, and Toronto's in 8th. That tells you how much stronger the West is this year. But yeah, Canadians doing Canadian things. Good for them.
The biggest impact I remember the Canadian Championship having, I think Vancouver a few years ago lost to a Canadian Premier League team.
Yes,
and
remember that.
the coach lost his job over that.
Yeah.
Speaking of MLS coaches, long ball number 2, the MLS coaching carousel is hotting up. And one of the foremost writers in American soccer, Mr. Tom Bogert, had quite a bit to say as far as the possible coaching openings.
Yeah, shout out to Tommy B, Tom Bogert, the mustachioed marauder, friend of mine. Love that guy. Give me smart these days. And also doing Soccer Wise as well with David Gass and Jordan Angeli, I think. Shout out to them. They're doing a similar thing to what we're doing. I actually was texting with Tom yesterday. Like, hey, got any tips? He's like, no. I just show up and do the show. Everybody else takes care of the hard stuff. But Tom is obviously writing. He's got all these sources. So this is the update on the MLS carousel in terms of coaches. He says Greg Berhalter is the leading candidate, a finalist perhaps for the Chicago job. It does take pains to point out that Berhalter has other options or is considering his options. Maybe he doesn't have them yet. Maybe he's just using that. I got some options. Give me more money, Chicago. He might want to hold out for a job in Europe, says Tom, which, I'm not the biggest Greg basher on the planet, but I find it difficult to imagine Greg Berhalter's got something decent in Europe lined up at this point based on his resume. This would be a job where he's both coach and general manager, which is a lot in MLS these days. And I think very important for Chicago Fire people, Frank Klopas would remain with the team because Frank Klopas, you can't get rid of Frank Klopas. He's got to be there somewhere. Like
of all the turmoil and turnover and the bad blood and misunderstandings and not getting along, Frank Klopas is the one universally liked person there.
I mean, yeah, it's hard not to like Frankie Klopas. I'll just say that. Beyond that, Peter Luccin, perhaps getting the permanent post in Dallas after taking over there. They've been playing some better soccer. No decision has been made on a contract or a contract agreed with Dallas going through the final stages of their coaching search, but the sources are confident that he'll get the job. He is the top choice, rather, at this point. It'd be a very Dallas thing to do, to give him the job, because that's what Dallas does. They don't go international. They're not like shaking the bushes to find the next talented young coach. You could argue that they have kind of done that, but it's almost been more of circumstantial than anything else. I don't think it's a bad option, but it just isn't sexy in the way that, maybe clubs in Major League Soccer, fans of clubs in Major League Soccer want their teams to turn. They want their teams to go and try to get the biggest name possible, and that's not where Dallas is.
As far as Dallas, what's the general consensus of what they need? I know they had a little bit of success and they seem to be on the boil and then they go very cold. What is the general consensus of what Dallas needs to become a power?
I mean, spending consistently. I mean, they've spent a little bit more recently, but spending consistently. Obviously, they had all that talent come out of the academy. It felt like they caught lightning in a bottle a little bit on that front. And then do they have the ability to keep that up? Trusting that you're constantly going to get MLS star level talent, not just like good enough to be on the roster to sign to a contract, but guys who are going to help you win a championship. That feels like a tough ask for the Dallas Academy. So I actually at this point I don't know. They're going to put a roof on their building. That they definitely need that. You know how hot it is in Frisco in the summertime.
I can only imagine. I'm about 500 miles north, and it gets crazy hot here in the summer. So I can only imagine what the scorched earth it is in Dallas on a Saturday afternoon.
So maybe Dallas has their coach. St. Louis, obviously making a choice in firing Bradley Carnell, their first ever coach. John Hackworth is the interim head coach there right now. And according to Tom, Danny Cruz, he doesn't have a list, and I don't know if Danny Cruz is the leading candidate, but Danny Cruz is a candidate. Danny Cruz is the head coach of Louisville City of the USL Championship. He's been in that job since 2021. He took that job, or he became the head coach after being the technical director previously in Louisville because John Hackworth left Louisville. So I find it fascinating that there's a possibility Danny Cruz could replace John Hackworth again in a head coaching job, this time in Major League Soccer. I think it's also interesting, and we don't have the time to expand on it today, Robert, but this being an American soccer show, there is a question of, does Major League Soccer do a good enough job giving real opportunities to USL Championship coaches who have proven that they can win at that level? This is an issue with players as well. Why is there not more of a market for USL Championship players coming up to Major League Soccer? We're constantly having those debates about how good is USL compared to Major League Soccer. We look at the results in the Open Cup, and the people who love lower division soccer and who are not fans of the MLS business model or the way MLS operates would say USL is not it's as good as MLS in terms of the quality. I think that's probably not right for the most part. But I think coaching is a little bit easier in terms of you don't have to have top level experience to level up the way that maybe a player does into Major League Soccer. So why wouldn't a Danny Cruz, why wouldn't some of these other USL coaches who have had success get an opportunity to coach in that league?
Having a self-sustaining ecosystem of players, coaches, and staffs is definitely something that is needed. There's kind of obviously with a lot of the things with American soccer is fractured. There's an invisible ceiling. If USL Championship players excel, they typically would go overseas more likely than to move up to MLS.
In terms of players, we have seen RSL grab a couple of talented young players from the USL and bring them in. Diego Luna being one of them. Obviously, I think it's Fidel Barajas, the Charleston Battery Mexican-American winger, is now a part of that RSL team as well. So, they're doing the work and taking a look and try, but those are young players, right? Those are players with potential who maybe they think of as assets down the line, that kind of stuff. Whether or not there's a real market. For example, we've got a new USL Championship all-time single-season goal-scoring champion. Okay, Nick Markovic, something like that. He's at Charleston too, right?
Correct.
Is that a player? He's 25, 26 years old. Is that a player anybody in MLS would take a look at, or do those goals not translate for them? And we've had a couple. Christian Ramirez was a star at the USL level, or whatever that league was back then. There were a couple of guys like that, but it seems like MLS chooses not to engage with the USL, maybe because if you pretend they don't exist, they'll go away.
That might be a big part of it. And I've also heard a lot of the standout players are internationals, and MLS may not want to take that risk.
That's a good point.
On an international player as well if they have limited international spots.
That's right. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, move on. Big weekend matches. I think we got to touch on this. Real Madrid, the Madrid Derby, taking on Atletico Madrid Sunday afternoon.
Robert, I'm gonna have to do this. I'm not trying to. I'm sorry, but you have to say Atletico. You can't say Atletico. People will come down on you because there's no H in there. Robert, it's not. And I've adopted this team. This is my team now in Spain. After I spent a couple weeks in Spain this summer, now I'm suddenly an Atleti fan.
You did a foreign exchange in the summer, and now you're telling me how to say Spanish things.
I am.
Okay, I see how it is. I'm sure. How many times did you chastise?
Well, I mean,
Barcelona.
Oh, also, hablo español. Like I actually do speak some Spanish, so I'm not coming at this like some gringo who has no Spanish skills.
That's that athletic team from Madrid, right?
That's right. Do you know about Diego Simeone? He's their coach.
He's a real tough guy there. The man in black, a man in black that I once liked, Johnny Cash.
Oh, we were going to talk about this game. I could have worn my Johnny Cash Nashville shirt. I think I've already worn that on this show this week, maybe. Atleti, Real Madrid, obviously a massive game. Not the biggest rivalry match in Spain because that remains Real Madrid, Barcelona, and El Clásico. But there are some things here. I think interesting that Kylian Mbappe is missing this game with an injury, a thigh injury. He's out. You have Jude Bellingham, obviously incredible season last year, has already had an injury this season. He is going to be available for this game. What does that look like? Conor Gallagher, formerly of Chelsea, has actually started very well at Atleti. I think it surprises some people, Robert, that Conor Gallagher has adapted to La Liga so well. But that's looking good for Diego Simeone. There's a lot of storylines here. This is number 2 and number 3 in the standings right now behind Barcelona. So they want to get 3 points off a potential rival for things and close the gap with Barcelona if possible.
Yeah, Atleti becoming a home for a couple castaway English players is kind of interesting. Like, I never thought that Trippier would turn into what he was, but Atleti really springboarded him to a whole nother level there for a while. And I'm not surprised, Conor Gallagher. I always thought he was a little bit harshly done by.
It's the hair. The hair puts people off. They don't like Conor Gallagher's look. They're like, that's a douchey guy. I don't like him. I think it's probably what it is.
He does not have the appearance of someone I would root for, says English
That may be what
people.
it is. I also throw in another storyline before we move on to other big games. Julian Alvarez. He was the big offseason signing for Atleti. He's the guy that's supposed to score goals. Obviously, he leaves Manchester City, where all they do is win trophies. Of course, he wasn't the guy there. He now has the chance to be the guy. Scored a big goal midweek against Celta Vigo, 90th minute. They needed that victory, right? That would have been Celta Vigo's having a good start to the season, but that would have been a tough 3 points to miss out on if you do want to be able to keep up with Real Madrid and Barcelona. So I think that's also a storyline here. What is Julian Alvarez's role in this game?
Moving to Germany, the biggest game there, Bayern Munich versus Leverkusen, the perennial lords of Germany. Bayern didn't win last year, and it was Leverkusen who were undefeated. Strangely enough, have already lost a game this season, but they take on each other. And if Leverkusen comes out with the W, they tie Bayern at the top early in the season.
Yeah, look, Bayern has been unstoppable so far. Right? It's so weird to say Bayern is back. Like what? Like how is that even a thing? Like how can Bayern ever not be back or not be good enough that they need to come back? But of course, as you said, they didn't win last year. They finished third. Bayern Munich finished third, and that's like, oh my god. But this is a very, very good team. I'm mildly surprised that Vincent Kompany has adapted as well as he has to the job. But then again, he does have the talent there. It's just a matter of making it all work together. They've added some people. Michael Elise has fit right in with Bayern Munich and looks very good.
Happy for Elise. I mean, what a come up. Crystal Palace to Bayern. Come on.
I know. Incredible. Obviously, Harry Kane, best goal scorer in the world for some people's money. Thomas Mueller has said this week he thinks Harry Kane is probably the best finisher he's played with at Bayern Munich. And obviously, Thomas Mueller's been there for, 50 years or whatever it is at this point. So he would know. And then Leverkusen remains Leverkusen, right? That last season was so magical that they should not be judged against that season. They're going to be in this hunt, maybe for the title. Definitely, they're going to be back in the Champions League spots. I think if they finish behind Bayern, it won't be any shame on Xabi Alonso. But they're still very, very good. We've seen it. They still play this incredibly interesting style of soccer where the team element, right, the organization it takes to play the way Bayer Leverkusen does, is interesting.
The final big game to touch on, we'll dig into it a little bit more, but just off the top of your head, Sunday afternoon, Premier League, Manchester United versus the Spurs. They've got an identical record. Who comes out on top on Sunday in England?
Yeah, I do think we need to dive into this one a little bit. Eric Ten Hag, especially off of what just happened in the Europa League, probably feeling a little down, but that's been the story. And it always feels like he finds a way to put lipstick on a pig. And there was a little bit of that. He plays both sides. We weren't good enough. Our mentality wasn't right, but most of the time our mentality is good. And man, if you watch that goal that they gave up against FC Twente to drop 2 points in the Europa League at home at Old Trafford, that's pretty bad soccer. So is that going to follow them into this match against Spurs? And then obviously for Spurs, they have the win in the Europa League, down a man after the sending off of Dragostin early in that game. Brendan Johnson gets on the score sheet. He's been a story for them because of the abuse he was getting, especially on Instagram. There are lots of things here. Postecoglou is my favorite guy to listen to talk, but is he going to be able to keep this energy up and keep them going? And you know, I think they're probably better than their record, but that ultimately doesn't matter when you're at a place like Spurs and you've got to get results.